The chair was already gone when I arrived. That was the first thing I noticed. For 26 years, my family had celebrated the first Saturday of June on the covered patio behind a little Italian place called Bellini's. My wife, Joanne, had started the tradition when our daughter was still in middle school. One table, same corner, same time every year. Joanne called it our unofficial family holiday. Birthdays moved around. Christmas became complicated once the kids married. But that Saturday belonged to us. Even after Joanne died 3 years ago, I kept going. Not because the restaurant mattered, because she had. My daughter Allison called me 10 days before the dinner. "Dad, we booked Bellini's." I smiled. "You got the patio?" "Same table." That caught me. "Really?" "Of course. Mom would haunt me if I changed it." I laughed. "Probably." "We're doing 6:30. Brian's parents are coming too." Brian was Allison's husband. His parents were decent people. I'd known them for years. "Sounds good." And the kids are excited. My grandson Mason was 11. His sister Chloe was 9. "Tell Chloe I'm bringing the card game. She'll cheat. She learned from your mother." Allison laughed. For a few seconds it felt exactly like one of those old calls from before Joanne got sick. Normal. Easy. I should have appreciated that more. Saturday evening, I arrived 10 minutes early. I always did. Bellini's patio was already busy. Families filled most of the tables. Someone had hung small string lights along the wooden beams, even though the sun was still up. I could see our table from the entrance. Allison was there. Brian, the kids, Brian's parents, 2 of his cousins. Everyone had drinks. Everyone was already seated. I counted chairs without meaning to. 8. Every chair was occupied. There used to be 9. Joanne's chair had remained empty the first year after she died. The second year, Chloe put a small vase of daisies there. Last year, we finally used it again. But there had still been a chair for me. Not tonight. A young hostess checked the reservation tablet. "Mr. Callahan?" "Yes." Her face changed, very slightly. That was enough. "I think I'm with the Callahan-Mercer party." She looked toward the patio, then back at me. "I was asked to let you know there was a change." "What kind of change?" She lowered her voice. "The table reached capacity." I looked past her. Bellini's had added chairs to that table many times. We'd squeezed 11 people around it after Mason's baptism. "Capacity?" She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." "Did Allison ask you to tell me this?" The hostess didn't answer directly. She said everyone had already been seated. That told me enough. Then Chloe saw me. She stood so quickly her napkin fell to the floor. "Grandpa!" Every face at the table turned. Allison looked at me, not surprised. That mattered. She knew I was coming. Brian leaned toward her and said something. I couldn't hear it. Chloe started walking around the table. Allison caught her hand. "Sweetheart, sit down." Chloe looked confused. "So Grandpa's sitting somewhere else?" Nobody answered her. I could have walked over. I could have asked Allison what she was doing in front of everyone. I could have made the entire patio uncomfortable. Instead, I looked at the hostess. "Don't worry about it. Sir, I can see whether we have another table." No. I didn't want another table, that was the point. I turned and walked back through the restaurant. Behind me, I heard Chloe call my name again. I kept walking. I sat in my car without starting it. There was a small gift bag on the passenger seat. Inside was the deck of cards I'd promised Chloe and a jar of peach preserves from a farm Joanne used to love. I had bought 2 jars automatically, one for Allison, one for myself. Old habits. My phone buzzed. A message from Allison. Dad, please don't make this into something. We had to rearrange things for Brian's family. I'll explain later. I read it twice. Then another message came in. This one from Chloe. Grandpa, are you coming back? I looked toward the patio through the windshield. From where I was parked, I could just see part of the roof. 26 years of dinners sat behind that building. Joanne laughing too loudly. Allison bringing home her first boyfriend. Mason asleep across 2 chairs when he was 4. Ordinary things. The kind you don't realize are important until someone decides you can be removed from them. I answered Chloe first. Not tonight, kiddo. I love you. We'll do cards soon. Then I looked at Allison's message again. Please don't make this into something. I didn't respond, because I hadn't made it into anything. Someone else already had. I drove home and put the gift bag on my kitchen counter. For most of my adult life, Saturday nights had been noisy. Joanne played music while she cleaned. Allison used to bring friends over without warning. Later, the grandchildren turned the house noisy again. Now I could hear the refrigerator cycling on and off. At 8:14, Allison called. I let it ring. At 8:19, she called again. Then came a text. Dad, I really need you to understand what happened. I set the phone down. Understanding wasn't difficult. She had invited me. She knew I was coming. Then she decided someone else's comfort mattered more than my place at the table. What I didn't understand was why she couldn't tell me before I drove there. Sunday morning, Chloe called. Grandpa, did you forget the cards? No, they're right here. Can I come get them? I smiled. You can. There was whispering in the background. Then Allison took the phone. Dad. Morning. Can we talk now? Not with Chloe listening. Another pause. Fine. I'll call tonight. She didn't. Brian did. Frank, I wanted to explain yesterday. I waited. My parents brought my aunt and uncle. We didn't realize how tight the table would be. You knew before I arrived? Yes. How long before? He hesitated. Maybe an hour. Then you had my phone number for an hour. Silence. That was all I needed. Monday afternoon, I stopped at the hardware store for fertilizer. When I came outside, I found Allison standing beside my car. She'd apparently been waiting. Dad, you won't answer me. You didn't call last night. Her expression tightened. I didn't know what to say. That makes 2 of us. She folded her arms. Brian's father has been having a difficult year. I knew that. He'd retired badly and hated depending on other people. He doesn't enjoy crowded places, she continued. We wanted him at the end of the table where he could get up easily. So you gave him my seat. It wasn't your seat. I looked at her. She immediately regretted saying it. Dad, that's not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant. She rubbed her forehead. We were trying to avoid making him uncomfortable. And you figured I'd be easier. She didn't answer. That was the first honest moment we'd had. I opened my car door. Allison touched my arm. Are you really going to stay angry over one dinner? I closed the door again. This isn't about dinner. Then what is it about? You invited me somewhere that has mattered to this family for 26 years. You removed my place after I was already on my way, and instead of calling me, you had a 20-year-old hostess explain it. Her eyes dropped. I thought you'd understand. I do. She looked relieved too quickly. I continued. You knew I'd probably swallow it quietly. That's why you chose me. The relief disappeared. I got into my car and left. That evening, I moved the gift bag from the kitchen counter. The peach preserves went into the pantry. The cards stayed out. Chloe had been promised a game, and whatever problem I had with her mother wasn't going to become hers. Then I noticed something taped to my front door. A folded sheet of notebook paper. Inside was a drawing. 9 stick figures around a long table. One had gray hair and an unnecessarily large smile. An arrow pointed toward him. Grandpa. At the bottom, Chloe had written, "I made another chair." I stood on the porch reading those 4 words. My daughter had spent days explaining why there hadn't been room. My 9-year-old granddaughter had solved the problem with 1 pencil. Chloe came over Saturday afternoon. Brian dropped her off and stayed in the car. She carried the deck of cards to my kitchen table like it was official business. "You shuffle." "Why?" "Because Mom says you cheat." "Your grandmother started that rumor." Chloe grinned. We played 3 games. She won 2. Before Brian returned, she became unusually quiet. "Grandpa?" "Yeah?" "Are you coming next year?" "To what?" "Our family dinner." I put my cards down. "That's a long way away." "But you're still family. There are questions children ask that adults spend entire weeks avoiding." "Yes," I said. "I'm still family." She nodded, satisfied. Then she reached for another cookie. After she left, Allison called. This time I answered. "Chloe had fun." "So did I." A pause. "Dad, I want to fix this." "Okay." "What do you want me to do?" That question bothered me. If I have to design your apology, it isn't worth much. I already apologized. You said you were trying to keep Brian's father comfortable. I said I was sorry too. You explained first. She went quiet. Then she said, "I don't know how to undo it." "You can't." That wasn't punishment. It was simply true. Some things aren't undone. They're followed by different behavior. The following Friday, I drove toward Bellini's without thinking. Halfway there, I realized what I was doing. For years, Joanne and I had sometimes gone there alone the Friday before our family dinner. After she died, I kept doing it. I could have continued. Instead, I turned around. Not because Allison had ruined the restaurant for me. I just didn't want to sit at that table wondering who had decided whether I belonged there. I stopped at a neighborhood diner I'd passed hundreds of times. The waitress brought coffee and called me sir. Nobody knew my history. Nobody knew Joanne. Nobody knew which chair was supposed to be mine. For one evening, that felt good. On Sunday, Brian came by alone. He stood on my porch holding the jar of peach preserves. "You left these in Allison's bag. I bought them for her. She doesn't think she should keep them." I took the jar. Brian remained standing. Finally, he said, "The extra people weren't the real reason." I waited. "My dad didn't ask for your chair." "That was new." "Who did?" "Allison." "Why?" Brian looked uncomfortable. "She thought having you there would make things harder." "For who?" "My mother." I frowned. Brian's mother and I had never been close, but we'd never had a problem either. "What problem does she have with me?" "Not you exactly." He looked toward the driveway. "Joanne." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "My wife has been dead 3 years." "I know." "Then explain that sentence." Brian took a breath. "My mother told Allison that every family gathering still becomes about Joanne. The table, the stories, the empty chair, the traditions. She said my parents always feel like guests inside someone else's family." I said nothing. Suddenly, the missing chair looked different. This hadn't been a last-minute seating problem. It had been a decision about which family history was allowed at the table. Did Allison agree? Brian looked down. She said maybe it was time for things to change. There it was. After he left, I opened the hall closet. Joanne's old recipe box was on the top shelf. Inside were birthday menus, grocery lists, little notes she'd written to herself. Near the back, I found a faded Bellini's receipt from our 20th anniversary. On it, Joanne had written, "Keep making new memories. Otherwise, the old ones get too heavy." I sat at the kitchen table with that receipt for a long time. Maybe Allison wasn't wrong that things needed to change. But changing a tradition was one thing. Removing a person without telling him was another. My phone buzzed. A message from Allison. "Brian told me he talked to you." Then another. "There's more I should have told you before that dinner." I looked at the screen. For the first time since Bellini's, I wasn't wondering why there hadn't been a chair. I was wondering how long my daughter had been planning to remove it. Allison came over the next morning. She didn't bring coffee or the kids. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and looked at the old Bellini's receipt beside my hand. "I started talking about changing the dinner months ago," she said. "With Brian and his mother." I waited. After Mom died, I kept trying to make everything exactly the same. Same restaurant, same table, same stories. Okay. And Brian's mother finally told me she felt like her side of the family was being invited into a memorial. That wasn't pleasant to hear, but I could understand it. "So you wanted a new tradition?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" Allison stared at her hands. "Because I knew you'd say you were fine with it." I frowned. "Then what's the problem?" "You always say you're fine." That landed differently. She reminded me of Christmas 2 years earlier, when I'd let everyone celebrate at Brian's parents' house because it was easier. Thanksgiving last year, when I'd given up hosting after Allison said managing 2 families was exhausting. Sunday dinners that became monthly dinners, then occasional ones. Each time I'd said the same thing. Whatever works for everyone. Allison looked at me. "I started assuming you'd adjust." There was no cruelty in her voice. That almost made it worse. "So, Mother's Day. Our family dinner," she corrected herself. "I thought if we changed it once, we'd finally stop organizing everything around what Mom used to do." "By removing me?" Her eyes filled. "No. But that's what happened." "Yes." For once, she didn't explain it away. I appreciated that. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "Brian told me to call you before you arrived." I looked at her. "He did?" "Yes." "Why didn't you?" "Because I knew you'd hear it in my voice." "Hear what?" "That I knew it was wrong." There it was. Not confusion, not a seating mistake. She had known. I didn't raise my voice. "What did you expect me to do when I got there?" Allison swallowed. "I thought they'd find you another table." "Alone?" She looked down. "I didn't think that far." "Yes, you did." She started to answer. I stopped her. "You thought I'd make it easy for you." She was quiet for several seconds, then nodded. "Yes." That answer hurt. It also helped. At least we were finally discussing what had actually happened. Before she left, Allison asked whether I would come to dinner at her house the following Sunday. "Just us. You, me, Brian, and the kids." "Not yet." Her face fell. "Are you trying to punish me?" "No." "Then why?" "Because if I come immediately, everyone learns the same lesson." "What lesson?" "That Dad gets hurt, Dad gets quiet, and then Dad comes back before anybody has to change." She didn't like hearing it. Neither did I. But I had spent years making myself convenient. I wasn't going to confuse convenience with kindness anymore. That Friday, I went back to the neighborhood diner. Same waitress. She recognized me. Coffee? Please. I ate meatloaf at the counter and talked baseball with a retired electrician named Warren. It wasn't Bellini's. That was exactly why I liked it. When I got home, there was an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was Chloe's drawing of the family table. She had changed it. The extra chair was still there, but now she'd drawn arrows between all the chairs and written, "We can move them." I laughed for the first time all week. Then I noticed another sheet behind it. This one wasn't from Chloe. It was from Allison. No long apology, just 4 handwritten lines. I kept calling you understanding when what I meant was convenient. I let you carry discomfort so I wouldn't have to. I knew what I was doing before you arrived. I'm sorry. I put the note beside Joanne's old receipt. For the first time, Allison had apologized without asking me to make her feel better afterward. That mattered. But it wasn't enough yet. The next morning, Brian called. My parents want to speak with you. About what? The dinner. I don't need an apology from your father. He didn't take my chair. I know. Brian paused. That's why it's my mother who wants to talk. I looked toward Allison's note. What changed? Another pause. She's finally admitted the idea to leave you out wasn't Allison's. I said nothing. Brian continued. It started with her. Brian's mother, Patricia, came to my house Sunday afternoon. She came alone. I expected explanations. Instead, she sat on the porch and said, I asked Allison not to invite you. I looked at her. Why? Because I was tired of feeling like our family was always being added to yours. That was worth excluding me? No. She answered immediately. That's what I came here to say. Patricia explained that the problem had been building for years. Every holiday had a Bennett, no, Callahan tradition attached to it. Joanne's recipes, Joanne's restaurant, Joanne's stories. Even after she died, Allison tried to preserve all of it. Patricia had started resenting a woman who wasn't there to defend herself. I told Allison that if this was supposed to include both families, something had to change. That part sounds reasonable. It was. She looked down. What I said next wasn't. She had suggested they use the annual dinner to establish a new version of the family tradition. Brian's parents would choose the seating. No empty memorial chair. Fewer stories about Joanne. And because I represented that old tradition more than anyone else, Patricia suggested I skip that year. Just once, she said. I stared at her. And Allison agreed? Eventually. That word mattered. Not immediately. Eventually. Did Brian know? He knew we were changing the seating. He didn't know Allison had decided not to tell you until you arrived. That explained his behavior afterward. It didn't excuse it. Patricia seemed to understand that. I thought you'd be hurt, she said. I didn't understand how humiliating it would be until I saw you standing there. You saw me? She nodded. From the patio, everyone had. And nobody came outside. No. I appreciated that she didn't dress it up. Then she said, I owe you something else. What? The table wasn't full. I already suspected that. There was another chair in the storage area. The manager offered to bring it. I felt my jaw tighten. What happened? I said no. There it was, the simplest fact in the entire mess. There had been room. Someone had deliberately decided not to make it. Why? Patricia took a long breath. Because once you sat down, I thought everything would go back to being about Joanne. I looked across the yard. My wife was dead, Patricia. She wasn't competing with you. I know that now. No, you knew it then. She didn't argue. After a moment, she nodded. You're right. When she left, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. But the situation was finally clear. Allison had betrayed me. Patricia had pushed. Brian had stayed quiet. But Allison was still the one who had invited me, known I was driving there, and decided I was the easiest person to disappoint. That distinction mattered. I wasn't going to let her hide behind her mother-in-law. Tuesday evening, Allison called. Patricia told me she spoke to you. She did. I should have told you that part myself. Yes. I was ashamed. I sat in Joanne's old rocking chair. What happens next time someone tells you keeping me around makes things uncomfortable? Allison didn't answer immediately. Then she said, I don't ask you to disappear. It was the right answer. But answers were easy. I'll believe it when I see it. I understand. And for once, she didn't ask when I would forgive her. The following Saturday, Chloe had a softball game. I hadn't planned to attend because Allison and Brian would be there. Then Chloe called me herself. Grandpa, we're playing the Tigers. Those Tigers sound dangerous. They're terrible. I laughed. I'll be there. When I arrived, Allison saw me from the bleachers. There were open seats beside her. She didn't wave me over. She didn't force a public reconciliation. She simply moved her purse off the bench and left the space open. I sat 3 rows higher with another grandfather I knew. After the game, Chloe ran straight toward me. This time, nobody stopped her. She wrapped both arms around my waist. We won! I noticed. Did you see my hit? I saw both. She looked toward her parents. Mom said we're getting pizza. Sounds good. You're coming. I looked at Allison. She didn't answer for me. She waited. That was new. Not tonight, I said. Chloe frowned. Why? Because Grandpa already has plans. I didn't, but I was learning that I didn't need an excuse to choose my own evening. As I walked toward my car, Allison caught up. Dad, I turned. We're changing the annual dinner. I said nothing. Not because Bellini's is bad, and not because Mom shouldn't be remembered. What are you changing? Everything. She took out her phone and showed me a reservation for the following month. A different restaurant. A normal Saturday. No anniversary. No inherited seating arrangement. I want us to build something new, she said, without throwing away what came before. That sounded healthier. Then I noticed the reservation. 7 people. I counted. Allison, Brian, Chloe, Mason, Brian's parents, and Allison. 7. There was no place for me. I handed the phone back. You might want to count again. Her face changed. Then she looked at the reservation. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, I didn't make this reservation. Who did? She looked toward Brian, and suddenly I understood that the problem inside their family wasn't finished yet. Allison called Brian over before I reached my car. Who made this reservation? He looked at the screen. My mom. Allison's expression changed. Why are there only 7 seats? Brian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Patricia had apologized to me, admitted what she'd done, then arranged another family dinner without me. Allison looked embarrassed. I wasn't. This time I hadn't been invited and publicly turned away. This time I knew exactly where I stood. Dad, wait. No. I didn't know. I believe you. She looked surprised, and I did believe her. That mattered. This one isn't yours to fix for me, I said. It's yours to decide for yourself. Then I left. That evening, Patricia called twice. I didn't answer. Brian called once. I didn't answer him either. Allison didn't call at all. At first, that worried me. Then Monday morning, she came to my house. I canceled the reservation. I poured her coffee. You didn't have to do that for me. I didn't. She sat down. I did it because Mom spent years teaching me something, and I finally realized I was teaching Chloe the opposite. What? That keeping peace doesn't mean finding the person least likely to complain and making him pay for everyone else's comfort. That sounded like something Joanne would have understood. So what happened with Patricia? I told her she doesn't have to attend every event we have. I raised an eyebrow. She didn't like that. I imagine not. But I also told her you don't automatically attend everything either. Nobody gets ownership of the family. That was better than choosing sides. It was a boundary. Then Allison slid her phone toward me. There was no reservation on the screen. Instead, there was a family group message. She had written, "No more inherited seats. No more deciding for someone else who belongs. If we invite someone, we make room for them. If there's a problem, we talk before the event, not after they arrive." Brian had replied, "Agreed." His father had written, "Should have been the rule already." Patricia hadn't responded. I handed the phone back. "You're going to have an uncomfortable week." Allison smiled faintly. "I think that's overdue." For years, she'd avoided discomfort. Now she was finally willing to carry some herself. That was the first thing she'd done that made me believe Mother's Day, our family dinner, might actually change something. 2 days later, Brian came over. "I need to tell you something." We sat on the porch. He didn't bring coffee or an apology speech. "My mother asked me to make that reservation." "So you did?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because after she spoke to you, she felt humiliated." I almost laughed. "She came to my house voluntarily." "I know, but she thought everyone was blaming her." "So excluding me again solved that?" "No." He looked down. "I knew it was wrong when I made the reservation." That sounded familiar. "Then why do it?" "Same reason Allison didn't call you that first night." He looked at me. "I chose the person who would create the least trouble." There it was again. The family had developed a system without ever naming it. Whoever was most reasonable absorbed the inconvenience. Whoever complained most got accommodated. And for years, that person had been me. "I won't participate in that anymore," I said. Brian nodded. "I know." "No. Understand what that means. I'm not asking you to choose me over your mother." "I understand. I'm asking you to stop using me to avoid dealing with her." He nodded again. This time I believed he understood. Friday afternoon, Bellini's longtime manager, Victor, called me. "Frank, I wanted to check something." "What?" "Allison canceled the family reservation for next month." "I know." She asked me another question afterward. I waited. "She wanted to know whether your old table was available this Friday." My first reaction was irritation. I wasn't ready for some staged family reunion. Victor must have heard it in my silence. "She didn't reserve it." "Good." "She asked me to keep it open until 6:30. After that, I can give it away." "For what?" "She said the choice should be yours." That was different. At 6:15 Friday evening, I stood in my kitchen. My car keys were on the counter. Beside them sat Chloe's drawing. "We can move them." I thought about Joanne. For years, I'd treated that table as though preserving it preserved something about her. But Joanne hadn't loved furniture. She'd loved getting people together. There was a difference. At 6:22, I picked up my keys. When I reached Bellini's, the patio was quiet. Our old table was empty. No Allison, no Brian, no Patricia, no surprise gathering waiting for me. Just one small, folded card beside a menu. I opened it. Chloe's handwriting. "Grandpa, Mom says you get to choose this time." I sat down. Victor brought me a glass of iced tea. "Anyone joining you?" I looked at the empty chairs, then at my phone. I called Allison. She answered immediately. "Dad? Where are you?" "At home." "Bring the kids." Silence. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Brian?" I thought about it. "Him too." Another pause. "And Patricia?" "No." I wasn't trying to punish her. I simply wasn't ready. For the first time, I didn't need to pretend otherwise. "Okay," Allison said. No argument, no guilt, just okay. 20 minutes later, Chloe came running onto the patio. This time, nobody stopped her. And before she sat down, she grabbed the chair beside mine and pulled it closer. "Not there," she said. "Now there's room." That dinner lasted a little over an hour. Nobody gave a speech. Nobody tried to turn it into a ceremony. Chloe told me about softball. Mason complained about summer reading. Brian and I argued about whether the Reds had any chance that season. Allison mostly listened. At one point, she looked toward the chair where Joanne used to sit. Then she looked at me. "You okay?" "Yeah." And I was. The chair was just a chair. It had taken me longer than it should have to understand that. When the check came, Brian reached for it. I stopped him. "I've got mine." "Frank, come on." "No." He looked ready to argue, then caught himself. "Separate checks." "Separate checks." Victor smiled like he'd heard something amusing. It wasn't about $28. I simply wanted us to stop treating family as a place where boundaries disappeared. We could sit together without owing each other control. Patricia didn't come. 3 weeks later, she called. "I owe you a better apology." "You already apologized." "I apologized because I felt guilty. Then I did the same thing again." I couldn't disagree. She continued. "I kept thinking there wasn't enough room for both families." There was. I know. That was all. No invitation. No demand that I forgive her. A month later, I saw her at Mason's birthday party. She said hello. I said hello. We both stayed. That was enough for then. Allison changed too, but not dramatically. That was how I knew it was real. She stopped assuming. If she wanted me somewhere, she asked. If plans changed, she called before I left home. And when Brian's family wanted something different, she stopped volunteering me as the solution. One afternoon, she asked, "Do you miss the old tradition?" "Sometimes." "Do you want it back?" I thought about Joanne's note. "Keep making new memories." "No." Allison looked surprised. "I want what it was for. I don't need exactly what it was." She nodded. I think I finally understand that. The next June, we didn't reserve Bellini's. We rented a picnic shelter beside a lake. Different food, different chairs, no assigned seats. Brian's parents came. So did a few people who had never been part of Joanne's original tradition. Chloe brought the old deck of cards. At one point, she dragged a folding chair beside mine. "You have room?" I looked around. There were empty chairs everywhere. "Plenty?" She sat down. Across the shelter, Allison caught my eye. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. For years, my family had called me easygoing. I used to be proud of that. Then I learned how easily easygoing can become he won't mind. And how quickly he won't mind becomes permission nobody actually asked for. My daughter hurt me. I didn't need to cut her out of my life for that. I also didn't need to pretend it hadn't mattered just to keep everyone comfortable. What changed our relationship wasn't the apology. It was what happened afterward. She stopped deciding for me. Brian stopped expecting me to absorb problems he didn't want to confront. Patricia learned that making room for her family didn't require removing someone from mine, and I learned something too. I didn't need the same restaurant. I didn't need the same table. I didn't even need the chair Joanne once sat in. But if my family wanted me there, I expected them to make room before I arrived. Not after they saw me standing at the door.